It's 5:05 and welcome into a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM at WBT. Good morning to you. We start off with an update this morning on a situation that unfolded almost 1 week ago, or almost exactly 1 week ago here in Charlotte around 5 p.m. That's when a stabbing took place, the second high-profile stabbing on the Charlotte light rail, and we are learning detail this morning from the United States Department of Justice, the DOJ, that they have filed charges against the suspect in this case, a twice-deported illegal immigrant from Honduras. His name, Oscar Solenzano Garcia. He is accused of stabbing a 24-year-old back on December the 5th. He is being charged federally with re-entry of a removed alien and committing an act of violence on a mass transportation system. That is the same charge that DeCarlos Brown Jr., the individual who stabbed and killed Irina Zarutska back in August, that is one of the same federal charges that he is facing as well. Attorney General Pam Bondi commented in the DOJ press release saying, not only should this defendant have already been in prison, he should not have been in our country to begin with. This attack is more tragic evidence that soft on crime policies and vetting failures put innocent citizens at risk. My prosecutors will deliver swift, comprehensive justice in this case. FBI Director Kash Patel also commenting on the situation, saying that this type of violence will not stand in American cities, saying the people of Charlotte deserve to live in a safe city, and this horrific act should never have happened. As the FBI has illustrated, we will not stand for this type of violence in our communities. Our mission is to keep our communities safe, and that is exactly what the men and women of the FBI are working to accomplish each and every day. As I mentioned, this marks the second high-profile violent incident on Charlotte's public transportation system. Going back to August the 22nd of this year, 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska was brutally murdered by a repeat offender by the name of DeCarlos Brown Jr. while riding the Lynx Blue Line. Brown also has some of those charges from the federal government. The U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, Russ Ferguson, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County is in the Western District, so the same name that you probably heard after the Irina Zarutska murder, had this to say: this defendant is charged with coming back to the United States after being deported not once but twice, and then stabbing a person in the chest on our city's public transportation system. Everyone who uses public transportation is the victim of a crime like this, and we will act swiftly to prosecute those who violate our immigration laws and endanger the lives of citizens using public transit to go about their daily lives. The criminal complaint alleges that Solenzano Garcia is an alien unlawfully present in the United States. It further alleges that in 2012, he was arrested by the Union County Police Department, that's in the Union County in New Jersey, and was later convicted of robbery. In July of 2016, he was arrested by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, also not North Carolina, that in Florida, for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. At that point, he was removed from the United States in March of 2018 during the first Trump administration. 9 months later, Solenzano Garcia was arrested by U.S. Border Patrol. He was convicted of illegal re-entry and sentenced to 18 months in prison. On June the 9th, 2021, he was once again removed from the United States when he was found in portions of South Louisiana, and that was his second deportation. DHS reports that they are not immediately clear as of right now at what time and location the 33-year-old Honduran illegal alien made his third entry into the United States, but we do know for sure that it happened as he was in the city of Charlotte back over the last couple of weeks, and 1 week ago stabbed a 24-year-old on the Charlotte light rail. So federal charges being levied against them, as many questions are still being asked locally about the process that has unfolded over the last couple of days and weeks. This individual, Oscar Solenzano Garcia, had already been banned from the Charlotte light rail system. He, however, was still able to ride it. No enforcement mechanism for those individuals banned from the system. At the same time, he was drinking. He not only was drinking alcohol in an open container, but he was already apparently drunk, according to eyewitness reports, being aggressive with other passengers, just trying to mind their own business and get to either work, home, school, what was going on Friday night in Charlotte, doing minding their own business, trying to get around town when he got into a verbal altercation with somebody who asked him to stop drinking, stop harassing individuals. That escalated to the point in which the 33-year-old pulled a knife, stabbed the 24-year-old in the chest, sending him to the hospital, as there is still an incredible amount of criticism on the city of Charlotte, CATS, the Mecklenburg County Commission, over crime on public transportation. Earlier this week, we learned some information from the Charlotte City Council that they are going to be executing a contract worth $3.4 million, not to increase law enforcement on the Charlotte light rail system, not to bolster security, not to work through a process of enforcing. For example, when people are banned, enforce ticket enforcement for the system. No. $3.4 million for a PR, a marketing campaign to convince those that would like to or already are taking advantage of systems like the Charlotte Light Rail that it is safe to do so. That has grown some criticism as well from those across the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Some other individuals commenting on the situation as well. The special agent in charge is an individual by the name of James C. Barnacle Jr., who said Oscar Solanzaro Garcia should not have been on the Charlotte Light Rail last Friday. In fact, he should have never been in our country. He has a violent criminal history and was deported twice. These two recent attacks on the city's light rail system make one thing clear. Safety measures on public transportation in our city must be strengthened. People deserve a secure and reliable transit system where they can make it to work and back home unharmed. Something I found kind of unique in this press release from the Department of Justice, that's where all of these quotes are coming from. The Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department actually had a quote in this. I found that kind of interesting in the Chief Patterson actually commenting on this, saying, quote, our strong partnerships with federal and community stakeholders are essential to keeping our cities safe. Federal charges brought against violent offenders send a clear message. If you commit violent crimes, you will be held accountable. Actions have consequences, and we will continue working with our justice partners to ensure offenders are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This story obviously will continue to get pretty significant coverage across not only the state of North Carolina, but it picked up some immediate national attention as well. If you were with us earlier this week, we covered some of that national attention, which went as high as it possibly could go here in the United States. President Donald Trump taking to a Truth Social last weekend to say, another stabbing by an illegal migrant in Charlotte, North Carolina. What's going on in Charlotte? Democrats are destroying it like everything else, piece by piece. It also got some comment from Governor Josh Stein, Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles, and many others throughout the city as well. We will keep our eye on the legal process as it continues to unfold. Now, two different angles of it. We've got those attempted first-degree murder charges. Those are being sought locally, and now some of these federal charges coming out of the DOJ, which do include illegal reentry into the United States of America and committing an act of violence on a mass transportation system, something that has been enshrined in United States law now going back close to 100 years. We'll follow both of these parallel legal challenges as they play out at both the federal and local level. It's now 5:14 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. You're listening to Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM at WBT. We'll head on over to the traffic center on your Friday early morning commute. Get a look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Good.
Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's 521 on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM. WBT, North Carolina's overall financial health looks to be in good shape. Of course, at the federal level, national discussion over the last couple of months has been a lot of economic uncertainty, whether we're talking about tariffs or interest rates. However, things look pretty good here in North Carolina. This is according to a new audit coming out of State Auditor Dave Bolick's office of the State of North Carolina Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. That base report that was audited is published by the Office of the State Controller. The report released by the North Carolina Office of the State Auditor was created from financial statements that were audited by the Auditor's Office after that report came out, that annual report from the Controller's Office. State Auditor Dave Bolick said in a press release, the State Auditor's Office audits the financial information used to determine whether North Carolina's financial statements are reliable. Our team made 6 adjustments this year and had 1 material finding related to the Department of Commerce. Because our team's work, these issues were corrected, resulting in a true and accurate financial figure being presented to the public. With the State Auditor's Office's opinions, state executives, policymakers, and industry leaders, they can all confidently rely on these important financial statements for future decision-making. Ending the quote there from Auditor Bolick. The 6 adjustments were corrected, and the adjustments were related to the Department of Commerce, and the one there was significant enough to result in a financial reporting finding, which will be included in an upcoming single audit report, according to auditors who published this information this week. The total overstatements for the department were $872.8 million, and the total understatements actually were $262.5 million. So that is what we are looking at there. However, this report, focusing on an audit of our annual comprehensive financial report, the state's net positive position increased by $6 billion, or 6.51%, according to the report. At the year's end, the net position of government activities and business-type activities totaled a whopping $88.67 billion and $9.48 billion, respectively, looking at government and business activities. Operational grants and contributions increased by $6.1 billion, or almost 19%. That was primarily noted and driven by Medicaid expansion across North Carolina, as charges for services increased by $1.79 billion, or almost 19.5% there. This growth is primarily attributed to increased lottery ticket sales and higher medical billing resulting from the expansion of Medicaid. So able to tie those pretty high percentages, almost 19% and almost 19.5%, for those 2 different figures being linked in large part to Medicaid expansion across North Carolina. Individual income tax revenues increased by $637.82 million, reflecting almost a 4% growth, which is attributed to higher wages and extended low unemployment rates. So that's some good news for the state, as corporate income tax revenue also saw an increase as well at $38.47 million, reflecting growth of just over 2.5%. Insurance tax revenues increased by $233.16 million, reflecting almost 19% growth, once again primarily attributed to Medicaid expansion. That growth was driven by a rise in gross premium tax revenues from Medicaid and the prepaid health plans there, which resulted from hospital reimbursements and increased Medicaid enrollment over the last couple of years. Sales and use tax revenues also saw an increase across the Tar Heel state of almost $400 million, reflecting growth of 3.25%, attributed to sustained strength in consumer spending. Franchise tax revenue is the only thing that decreased in this report, and that decreased by almost 5.5%. We'll take a look at a couple of different things in this report. Spending increases. Health and Human Services spending increased by a little over $5.5 billion, which rounds out to about 16.5%. Once again, primarily driven by Medicaid expansion across North Carolina. In some other spending increases, public safety, corrections, and regulation spending increased by $1.92 billion. That is a 40% increase, which is being attributed to enhanced service provided, such as those related to Homeland Security and ongoing hurricane recovery efforts in western North Carolina. Higher education spending increased by $884.48 million. That was primarily due to increased state aid and funding from sports wagering. Many of the dollars that the state does pull in from electronic sports betting, all the apps that you can install on your phone that you see commercials for, a lot of that money, the vast majority of it, goes directly back to the UNC system and some of the schools there before a much smaller percentage makes its way to the state's general fund, which you can think of as kind of a big old savings account that the state of North Carolina has. The state's investment in capital assets was a little over $76 billion in this report from the previous fiscal year. The largest component of capital assets is the state highway system, as North Carolina has over 80,000 miles of a highway system that it is responsible for, making it, this is a pretty interesting stat, the second largest state-maintained highway system in the nation right here in North Carolina. Capital projects in progress include nearly $3.14 billion for state highway projects, completed 540 projects there, about $300 million. DHHS's new system for managing and administering Social Security benefits, a little over $800 million on that. Relocation projects for Department of Homeland Security facilities, a little under $250 million there, and new education campuses to house several education system offices, just over $100 million. The state had long-term debt outstanding of $7.2 billion. That is a very slight, but still an increase from years past. The percentage of that is 0.08% from the previous fiscal year, so that pretty much staying the same, a slight increase there. And in 2025, the top three credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's Investor Services, and Fitch Ratings, all affirmed the state's AAA bond rating, which significantly lowers the risk of default and shows the strong financial health and strong financial situation in North Carolina. One of the other huge benefits of having those AAA bond ratings at the state level is it allows the state to borrow money at a much lower interest rate had their bond rating been AA or single A. North Carolina remains one of only 14 states with that AAA rating from all three major rating agencies, and State Treasurer Brad Briner told the Carolina Journal back in October that the bond rates, including those from Moody's and S&P, indicated that the state was in very good financial shape. At the time, he told the Carolina Journal, North Carolina continues to be an incredibly well-run state financially, and that's been true for a long, long time, and it will be true for a long, long time in the future. I know we went through a lot of numbers and percentages. Encourage you to check out some additional information on this report, not only from the State Controller's Office as they release the State of North Carolina's annual comprehensive financial report, but some additional details and findings from North Carolina State Auditor Dave Bullock. All of those details available this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. The headline story there, Audit shows North Carolina's overall financial health remains strong. So as, again, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions continue to be asked at the national and federal level over various pieces of economic uncertainty. While we are not immune from tariffs and other trade policies that cause prices to fluctuate or prices to be rather uncertain, seems like everything in their power is being done here in North Carolina to continue to keep the state on strong financial footing. Again, additional details over at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:30 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center, get another look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Hot.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM at WBT. Good Friday morning to you. It's pretty crazy to think that come February the 12th, 2026, voters across the state of North Carolina will begin making their way to voting locations across the state. That is when early voting begins for the 2026 municipal or midterm elections and the primaries for those elections taking place. So we're going to see a lot of activity going on here in the next couple of months. Obviously, here in North Carolina, the big national primary that we are watching is the Senate race that's going on, but the General Assembly is elected every 2 years, and we will see some primaries in some of those races. To walk us through one of those pretty high-profile races this morning, it involves the leader of the North Carolina Senate in Phil Berger. To walk us through some of those details, Donna King, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Donna, Senator Berger is the longest tenured speaker in North Carolina history. He's got a very high profile in the North Carolina Senate, but he's facing a primary challenge from a pretty well-known guy in the area he represents.
He is. Now, Senator Berger's been Senate leader more than a decade now. He really came in with, he had been in the state Senate before, but he was elected leader by the caucus when Republicans took over in 2010, won the election in 2010, took over in 2011. He really is the architect of what we've seen happen in state policy, state government policy, tax policy over the last decade. So it's something that I think that most people felt like he was untouchable because he owned the recovery that we saw in North Carolina go through. But he's got a primary challenger. Sheriff Sam Page in Rockingham County is mounting a challenge to him in the primary. Now, it is important to note, because I've been kind of surprised at how many people don't realize that he's not being challenged as Senate leader, that the person, if someone were to unseat Senator Berger, that person would not be the Senate leader. That person would then represent Senate District 26 as a freshman, I guess, coming in new. So Senate Leader Berger is really facing this challenge. They're going at it full force. You're seeing it on Twitter. And now Berger has the endorsement of President Donald Trump as of this week. President Trump put up a tweet or a Twitter X post saying that he fully endorses, unequivocally endorses Berger for this seat, and said that while he likes Sam Page, he'd like to see him as part of maybe the administration or something, that he was backing Senator Berger, complete and total endorsement, which is what the X post said, saying that, Berger said that he and the president are aligned in that they're both fighting to improve lives in North Carolina, standing up to woke leftist policies. So that was all part of the big announcement this week. Sheriff Sam Page responded saying, thank you for the encouragement to the president, saying that he has always been a supporter of Trump as well, and had some really critical things to say of his primary challenge about Senator Berger. So it's going to be a rough and tumble couple of months before that early voting starts.
And you mentioned this endorsement from President Trump, his post on Truth Social about that. Unlike what we see, and the president does not shy away from this, Donna, he trashes people all the time. I mean, regardless of whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, he'll trash whoever as long as they're, I guess, opposed to what he's pushing. But he ends this post by saying, both of these are great guys. Sam Page has supported me. Phil Berger has supported me, wanting Page presumably to, I guess, grab some sort of job in the administration. So he's not taking the typical approach we see over against like a Thomas Massey or somebody else, that the president, or Rand Paul or somebody else that he's been at odds at over the last couple of months. I think that's kind of unique in this case.
Yeah, I think it is, but still early. You never know. That can change pretty quickly in the White House politics and primary politics that we're seeing here. I think a lot of what it is that there are North Carolina's congressional delegation is very powerful, and Phil Berger is a real part of the culture that helps with those congressional delegations, and that congressional delegation is very close to the White House. So you're seeing these relationships built over a decade, and I think that's also one reason why, because Berger has been, a big supporter of certainly immigration policies and participating and a lot, cooperating with ICE and keeping taxes low. And a lot of the policies that he has supported over the last decade are aligned with the White House. And that's something, Sheriff Page has been really pushing his campaign to be much about public safety and those things, because he's a sheriff. And so I think it is going to be very political probably very expensive, my guess would be, with certainly a lot of North Carolina's political infrastructure, the sort of ecosystem of advisors and donors and all of those things are super engaged and really watching this one primary race.
And that's kind of what's so interesting about it, Donna. I spend a lot of time on social media, probably way more than I should. So I see a lot of this back and forth. And as you've noted, both of these guys are in their teams are trading nasties back and forth on social media. This is a North Carolina Senate district, predominantly located in Rockingham County on the Virginia border. This is not a this is not a large geographical area. We're not talking about Michael Whatley and Don Brown. We're talking about a North Carolina Senate district, and it seems like the entire state is fascinated, even though 99% of the people commenting can't even vote.
Right. Well, I mean, the stakes are high. Even if it is a Rockingham County Senate district, the person in that seat has been driving policy agenda for the North Carolina General Assembly for the better part of a decade, more than a decade. And that is why it's getting so much attention, because Berger really holds a position in the political ecosystem here that is probably more powerful than the governor in North Carolina, because he's been really deciding what legislation moves. He has held firm on things like taxes, which is one of the reasons we've had this budget impasse in North Carolina, because he wants to keep those corporate taxes going down and keep those triggers active. So he's been the one to stand up and defend those policies over the last decade. And so he has been quite a force to reckon with. And that's why it's getting so much attention.
Donna, let me end with this, and going back to the endorsement post on social media from President Trump, he offers Sam Page potentially some sort of position in Washington, D.C.
Sure.
It's not immediately clear what that is or where that would be or what the details are. You can kind of take that two ways. Either A, he just wants Page out of the primary because he doesn't want Berger to get kind of dirtied up in there. Or the other side of it would be Sam Page is a real threat to Phil Berger in this primary. We need to make sure we get him out of there so that Berger gets through. Where do you kind of fall on that? Are you somewhere in the middle? How are you reading the tea leaves on it?
I think it's both, truthfully. I think that, one of the things that hurt Berger's in 2023, there was a move to bring casinos at a very high tax rate into North Carolina. One of the 4 or 5 spots it could have been was going to be Rockingham County. I think that probably hurt him locally, but there's also been some other things that we've seen happen. We had the shrimp ban bill that Sam Page showed up at the state legislature with the shrimp trawlers, even though there's no shrimp in Rockingham County. But he showed up and he was there. And I think that he has ended up being a challenge to Berger all the way along. And from what I understand, from what I read, that the two families have actually been in conflict for several years. So I think that this is a long time coming. There was some rumor that perhaps Page was, kind of all talk and was not actually going to file, but he did file on the very first day of filing. So this has been coming for a long time, and it's going to be a tough couple of months until we get to that March primary.
Donna, for folks that maybe want to go and read that full post from President Trump that you mentioned and some of the other additional commentary on this, where can they go and do that?
Absolutely. Head over to carolinajournal.com and we will keep you updated.
We appreciate the information and the insight this morning. Donna King from carolinajournal.com joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:46 on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center on your Friday morning commute. Get a look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks so much, Nick. Have a nice minute.
Good morning again. It's 5:52. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM at WBT, as we continue coverage on a story that broke 1 week ago. In the city of Charlotte, another high-profile act of violence on the Charlotte light rail system. This morning, we are continuing our coverage as the United States Department of Justice has filed charges against a twice-deported illegal immigrant from Honduras. His name, Oscar Solenzano Garcia, who is accused of stabbing a 24-year-old around 5 p.m. on the Charlotte light rail back on December the 5th. That was last Friday. He is being charged federally with re-entry of a removed alien and committing an act of violence on a mass transportation system. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in the DOJ press release, not only should this defendant have already been in prison, he should not have been in our country to begin with. This attack is more tragic evidence that soft on crime policies and vetting failures put innocent citizens at risk. My prosecutors will deliver swift, comprehensive justice in this case. FBI Director Kash Patel said that this type of violence will not stand in American cities, saying in a recent press release, "The people of Charlotte deserve to live in a safe city, and this horrific act should have never happened. As the FBI has illustrated, we will not stand for this type of violence in our communities. Our mission is to keep our communities safe, and that is exactly what the men and women of the FBI are working to accomplish each and every day." This does mark the second high-profile violent incident on Charlotte's public transportation system. If you remember back to late August of this year, the 22nd to be exact, 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska was brutally murdered by a repeat offender, his name Carlos Brown Jr., while she was also riding the Charlotte Lynx Blue Line as part of the mass transportation system in the city of Charlotte in Mecklenburg County. Brown was also charged by the feds in that case as well. Similar charges on committing an act of violence on mass transportation. The U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, which does cover Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, Russ Ferguson, said this defendant is charged with coming back to the United States after being deported not once, but twice, and then stabbing a passenger in the chest on our city's public transit system. Everyone who uses public transportation is the victim of a crime like this, and we will act swiftly to prosecute those who violate our immigration laws and endanger the lives of citizens using public transportation to go about their daily lives. The federal criminal complaint alleges that Solenzano Garcia is an alien unlawfully present in the United States. It alleges that in 2012, he was arrested by the Union County Police Department in New Jersey, not Union County, North Carolina, where he was later convicted of robbery. Flash forward a couple of years, July of 2016, he was arrested by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. At that period of time, he was removed from the United States in March of 2018 during the first term of the Trump administration. 9 months later, after being deported, he was arrested by U.S. Border Patrol once again in the United States. He was convicted of illegal reentry and sentenced to 18 months in prison. That brought us to June 9th of 2021 under the Biden administration, when once again he was removed from the United States out of southern Louisiana. According to the Department of Homeland Security, it is not immediately clear, and they're not sure, frankly, this morning, of the time and location at which this individual made his third entry into the United States. But what we do know for sure is that it did happen as he was back in the United States, was on the Charlotte light rail back on December the 5th, drunk and disorderly, verbally harassing individuals riding the Charlotte light rail, trying to get home from work or to work or to school, back from home. It doesn't matter. Everybody was riding the light rail. He was drunk and disorderly, got into a verbal altercation with somebody that turned physical. That's when Oscar Solenzano Garcia allegedly pulled a knife and stabbed a 24-year-old in the chest, and then being taken into custody by law enforcement at the next stop as continued criticism of CATS, the Charlotte area transportation system, the leadership in the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County over community violence, and especially in the span of just about 3 months, two major stories both gaining national attention. The murder of Irina Zarutska and then this stabbing that took place 1 week ago on the Charlotte light rail. You can get additional coverage of this. We will be keeping an eye on not only these brand new federal charges, which do include illegal reentry into the United States and violence on a mass transportation system, but also some of the local charges in here as well, which do include first-degree attempted murder. We'll keep you up to date as we get additional details from the courts over on our website, carolinajournal.com. Well, that's going to do it for a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you Monday morning, 5 to 6, right here on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT.